drawing trees and painting trees and wildlife. I said, this is Plasnoid on Anglesey. And the idea was to show the red squirrels, which were introduced here on Anglesey. We brought them back. And the grounds of Plasnoid as well, and the Menai Strait, and show the red squirrel in a tree that was the same sorts of colors as the bird, as the squirrel. So that's a Scots pine, and in the background there, there's a beech tree. So you'll notice how we're trying to integrate the colors, use the same colors for the trees as for the wildlife and the background. So Plasnoid is slightly pinky as well. So that's that was the idea. Okay. Has it changed? No. Can you see that? That working? Okay.
Yes, it is, yeah.
So it was some of the first trees that we've ever seen painted were back in medieval times. And this is a typical Christian religious painting. I've forgotten who it was actually, someone like Giotto. And we can see the tree is quite accurately painted. In fact, far more accurately painted than many trees were painted back then. You know, we're talking about 600-700 years ago. And this is a very modern, or modern, although it's actually quite old-fashioned already. This is a beautiful etching by Charles Tunnicliffe, one of the 20th century's greatest all-round country artists, and he illustrated a lot of books. He illustrated over 300 books, all about, mainly about the British countryside. And this is a typical, this is an idealized view of an English village in the somewhere like the Cotswolds or the Downs, with I'm sure that the experts who know sheep will know what part of the country it is by looking at the sheep. So it's not an etching, it's a wood engraving. So he had to carve this into very hard wood and fill the tiny scratches with ink and then print them out by rolling the paper onto the ink. So it's quite a difficult concept to do. Now, trees are also very symbolic when you look in all the way back to the tree of life in the garden at Genesis. And these are all various interpretations of the tree of life, but they're done from different points of view, from pagan point of view and Christian point of view as well. So some of them are from Jewish mysticism, like this tree of life here, but they're all based on the original tree. So it's amazing how even Charles Darwin invented his own tree of life due to evolution, which of course is scientific rubbish. But and here's a modern tree of life, another pagan symbol, a Christmas tree. We won't go into the origins of that. But if you look in the Bible for references to large trees and cedar trees and what have you, you'll find that it's largely a pagan concept. But the way we decorate them is also goes back to witchcraft and what have you. Now, I can't quite, it says at the top, there's a very well-known poem that talks about a poem as lovely as a tree. I have never seen a poem as lovely as a tree, etc. And this is a beautiful painting of a beech tree. Again, it's done by Charles Tunnicliffe about almost 80 years ago. But you see the way it's a very statuesque. It almost looks like a Greek statue, because the key to painting something like this is the shadows. You see how the shadows show the shape of the tree so beautifully. It's a 3D thing. This is one of my own paintings and one of my favorite trees, which is a birch tree. And these are actually back in my native Cheshire. We don't get many things like this on Anglesey, although birch trees, of course, are very widespread, very beautiful. You know that one of the biggest problems in a painting like this is doing a tiny bird in a large scene. So I have to make sure that it looks as if the bird is in the foreground, because of course it isn't really as big as that in relation to the birch tree. But this sort of scene has been very popular. I've painted a lot of birch trees with birds, and this is vaguely based on Chinese painting. If you look at Chinese painting, it has this sort of feel to it, a lot of Chinese painting. Now, in the last 100 years or so, there have been a lot of painters in Britain who've painted scenes like this. Scenes like this have become very popular in Britain, in the Lake District, in Scotland, in Wales. And this is a typical scene, and it shows you how to put trees into a landscape. You've got to simplify in them, and that's what we're going to do in a minute. We're going to try and simplify trees. And if you look here, you'll see a typical pine tree and probably elm and others here. They've all got their particular shapes. And this is another very, very English scene. This is from the late 19th century engravings, again showing a very, very popular British concept of walking into the distance, walking into the sunset down some quiet country lane. Nowadays, of course, you'll probably be run over by a farmer on a tractor or four-wheel drive. But this is the idyllic British countryside, as it probably never was, because the people that lived in these little cottages lived in darkness, poverty, and squalor mainly. But this is the idealized, romanticized view of Britain. Roll on the new heavens and the new earth. Now, when this one was drawn, this is a scraper board. For those who are interested in the techniques, scraper board is a chalk ground that you put black ink on and you scrape it out or you draw onto it. So it's like an etching or an engraving. This again is Charles Tunnicliffe, about 1920, 1930, back in his native Cheshire. This is the foothills of the Pennines, and it's a beautifully drawn scene, and it's a very accurate scene as well for back then, with the village church and the farmer walking his sheep down the road. But Tunnicliffe was a very down-to-earth character. He was not a romantic, so he knew the reality of living like that. This is another wood engraving of his, of a wind-shaped hawthorn tree up on the hills. If you live in the hills or on the edge of the countryside, edge of the sea, you'll see these trees are bent by the wind, and the trees are shaped, they're formed to the countryside by the elements. So here's a couple of, just the last couple of my two different looks at trees. This is down on the Mouthach Estuary in mid Wales, and it's a tree that isn't actually there. This estuary, this beautiful estuary is here with the swans, but this particular Scots pine has been added by me just to make up a pleasant composition. This is back in my native Cheshire, looking from a place called Rawhead and Raw Edge. I don't know who's doing that, but that's very good. This is Rawhead on the Sandstone Trail. This is Red Sandstone Trail rocks, looking across to Cheshire, to Wales, with a red fox. And again, I didn't see the red fox in that position, but I've seen them near there. And so I've integrated the red fox with the reddish background. So what you also have to do, as I said earlier, is to simplify trees. This is actually Snowdon and the Glassland Valley with an osprey. I'm sure you can see that osprey has a mullet there, or a trout. But what we've got in the background here are great woodlands and hillsides covered in trees. So you've got to simplify them virtually into rounded lumps, and only in the foreground can you put in details like this rowan tree. And again, we want to integrate the colors. This is looking down on the estuary here where I actually live. Again, that's Snowdon in the background, but from the north. This is Snowdon from the south. This is Snowdon from the north, and the hills of Snowdonia and the Clyn Peninsula. And this is the estuary where I live. I live down at the end here, looking down upon a buzzard soaring along the trees. Again, here I've tried to integrate the trees into the landscape by simplifying them into rounded shapes or into conifer shapes. And you can see again, the difference here is in the color. Deciduous trees tend to be greener, conifer tend to be a darker green. And we've got Nuba forest in the background here as well, fading into the background. So this is what we're going to be doing today. I hope you all got this through email from Ben. And it was part of an article I did for one of the Nature's Explorers magazine. So I'll just quickly show you what these are. This is a Scotch pine. This is a willow. This is a alder. This is, you know, I've forgotten. I did these last year. I forgot what that one was. This is an oak tree. This is an ash. This is a birch. These are willows again, and that's a typical forestry tree. Can't remember what that one was. Anyway, but here, the first ones we'll do are much simplified, a conifer, an oak type, and an alder. So we're going to start with these simple shapes and work it up, but these are the most basic. The first thing to tell you about drawing trees is, as you probably know, every single tree is unique. So you can't get it wrong. You can vary the shapes yourselves, put as much or as least detail in as you like. So I'll stop the screen share now, and hopefully we'll have no more problems. I'll go back to the other camera. Yes. I hope you can all see that. Just wave your hands if you can see that. Good. Right, okay. So what I need, oh, also this one came off the net, off the internet. And so there are, if you want to look up yourself, you'll find lots of things like this, you know, how to draw things, how to simplify them. Okay, piece of paper. It's actually a white paper, although for some reason it looks looks orange and green to me. Right, so where's the I'd better it's very easy for me to forget, and so it's very easy for me to forget and just start drawing things at random. So I shall try and copy my own drawings. Okay, we'll start with one of the simplest. Now, we'll start with one of the simplest, the oak type tree. So it's basically a circle. So it doesn't have to be a perfect circle at all. And of course, they usually have a central stem. Now, as it's an oak, the leaves come quite low down, so it won't be a very long trunk. Now, it's also, if you think of the veins, and the branches will come off like this in all sorts of directions. Now, basically, be going outwards. They'll be overlapping, and you can put on as many or as few as you like. So that's the basic thing. So what we need to do now is make the trunk thicker. I'm going to thicken that up. It doesn't have to be equally thick. It's these branches, as the branches go up, they're going to get thinner and thinner. So this one here is going to be quite thin down here. And then as the tree goes up, each branch will basically be, we want to get all the branches basically will be roughly as thick as the whole tree, if you can follow that. So they're all getting thinner. By the time we get up here, they'll just be single lines by the time you get out to the outside. But of course, you can come out a bit from the outside. It's only basically a circle. In fact, at the top, it might come out a bit like that. But even these lumps, as they were, these bumps of leaves, will not be all the same. Some will be small, some will be larger. Some of them might hang down like that, or like that. So we're just going up. And of course, they're overlapping as well. Some of them will be coming out towards us to try and give depth. It's difficult to show that there. So what I'll do here is this one will overlap. So this one behind it will look like it's going away into the background. You can, as always, you can rub out as many bits and pieces as you like. Or if you want to color them later, you can leave them all in. We don't want them all the same thickness either. That one, do that one quite thin. And this one a little bit thicker. As I say, you don't have to, I'm sure you know, you don't have to follow me. You can make your branches go from anywhere at all. Another one there in the background. That's coming from behind the main trunk. So the main trunk here is still quite thick. And this one also in the background. Of course, some will be snapped off as well. I'll just do that one quite thin there. But again, if you want to really get into it, don't hurry by filling it all in now. You can fill it in later. The best thing perhaps is just to get the basics in. You can start to rub bits out like that. To give it more shape and feeling. And of course they won't all go out all the way either, because some of them are coming towards you. But we'll focus on mainly all these beautiful branches. Of course, like every bird, like every feather on every bird, and every leaf on every tree, and every single hair on every squirrel. Every one of these branches and leaves and twigs are absolutely unique. You'll never ever find the same one again. Just like identical twins are not actually identical. Every one is unique. We carry on. The idea is to, at this stage, get enough filled in. You see, the way I do it, I don't just follow one up. When I'm doing a bit on one, I'll add a bit on another. Always thinking ahead. That one needs to be a bit thicker. So already we've got got something looking quite good here. And at the edges, you'll see there's just a lot of shapes like that. In fact, by the time you get to this stage, you can start doing that. You don't necessarily need to join everything up. As I am quite a realistic painter, I generally do that. Make it look as authentic as possible. But you don't have to do that. So the good thing about this sort of drawing is a sort of tree. We'll have a little gap there as well. Not going to be perfectly rounded. Is that everything is unique and individual, so you can't basically get it wrong. Of course, the astonishing thing about trees is that underground, they are the same. They're all joined up, and they're all joined up all over the world by fungi. I think I've mentioned that before, actually. Fungi take nutrients from tree to tree and plant to plant, wherever they're joined together in woodlands all over the world. So once again, and free, yeah, I'm sorry, I don't think there's anything I can do about that, actually. Someone's pointed out that, I've not seen all the chat. Yes, it's the Wood Wide Web, exactly, yes. Right. Oh, it's the right way up, okay. Right. Difficult to keep up with all the chat as well. Yeah, the Wood Wide Web, excellent, yes. Everything is joined up. Every atom in the universe is joined up by God. Astonishing. Absolutely astonishing. Right. So I think we'll leave that one for now. And go on to the conifer. This actually looks suspiciously like a Christmas tree, but of course, these sorts of pines and spruces are the ones grown very commonly in forestry because they grow very rapidly and they can be harvested after just a couple of decades. They're commercial crops. So, not really a Christmas tree, but we're going to start with just a very tall and thin pyramid. Oops. And of course, down the middle, conifers do generally have very straight trunks, which is why they are grown for commerce to make things like fence posts out of and telegraph poles. And telegraph poles around here, we put osprey nests on them. So thanks to BT. Okay, now this particular sort of spruce, the branches hang down. Again, they're fairly evenly distributed and they also curve outwards. So we can do it like this. Again, you don't have to do them all the same. Try and do a bit of variety. Some overhanging, overlapping. Some not as close together as others. And you can very quickly, you should end up with something like that. Now we'll just do one particular branch to begin with. And again, it can come outside of the outlines. Remember, these are only general outlines, just to help the initial shape, the overall shape. Because whatever you're drawing, the overall shape first is always the most important. Remember, as we did with birds. So the trunks of these are not very wide. And a typical branch, we'll take this one, is going to have a kind of zigzag. I drew it here to begin with. That's what a typical branch looks like. But of course, these can be longer, some can be shorter. So it's like a kind of saw edge. You put one in like that. And of course, they're going to come forwards as well towards you. And that's more difficult. But we'll go up a bit first and do a few more. Remember to make some skinnier than others, some thicker, some just poking out from the background. And you can even have a bigger gap here so that it's not even all the way up. Then some that are more together, then another couple sticking out. So by the time you get to the top here, they will be quite small. So at this point, you can also rub out the bits you don't want to see. Again, down here, this one is going away from us. This one's quite small. Some of them, of course, might just be twigs sticking out. They might not have leaves on them at all. And of course, leaves, and these are needles. These are pine needles. So they're actually quite small, like that. They're not this sort of leaf. Sure you know that. That's an oak leaf. So at the front here, we're going to rub a bit out there and do a branch coming towards us. So it's like a spear shape, because it's coming towards you. Very difficult to show in a pencil drawing, but also we'll have a few bits sticking out here, overlapping that. So the idea is that things are coming towards you as well as going out to the side. Of course, that's not easy. I'll do another one here. So you see, if we do it like this, we've got them going in all directions. Now down here, I'll leave this bit bare. See, this trunk actually needs to be a little bit thicker, looking at the size of the tree. But I'm going to leave this bit bare here and put that one behind it. Again, rub out the unnecessary bits. Oh, somebody's asked, can this same tenor be used for logs and saplings, the tree's design? Yes, I think so. I think I know what you're saying. It's remember that basic patterns in nature are in all sorts of things. So these sorts of trees will also, these sorts of patterns will also be in ferns. And if you look down from above, you'll see them in river estuaries, and you'll even see them in other sorts of life as well. Right, so we're going to go up here and do a slightly shorter one, and then come back to a longer one, even one broken off. And we're going to go slowly up. I'll just rub that bit out there and overlap that bit. So again, they're going to be all different, but all following the same basic design, the same basic shapes. But my camera picks things up and makes certain lines look stronger than others, so they stick out more. So I'll just strengthen some of the other lines to make them all look a bit more the same. Now, nearly up here. I've actually made it a bit more irregular than they are. In the forest, they're usually much more regular, because of course they want regular trees. They want trees with the same straight trunks, straight of trunk and straight branches, although the branches are not used for much. In fact, the branches are not used at all. Right, so there we are. Just have another little spiky bit here. So there's a basic conifer. Okie doke. Right. We'll go on to this one now. This is a typical alder or willow tree where they often have several main trunks, either because we have cut them, it's called pollarding, to make more wood, or coppicing, where you cut the tree off, short, so that it sends out more trunks and branches. Okay, so this one, we're going to have a, oh yes, it's a basic, it's almost a semicircle. Again, it doesn't really matter how accurate or not you make your semicircle, a bit more than a semicircle. And it doesn't matter how many main trunks you have either. Sometimes they fall over and they send out different trunks. But there's always a main trunk down here at the bottom, however short, and that will send out one there, and then another one there, and one here. Again, we don't want to make them all equidistant, all the same. Give them variety. So this one will have 5 trunks, but only 4 of them will be the main growth trunks. So we need to remember these are willow or alder, these are quite thin trunks, So they're going to thin down quite quickly, quite soon. Again, remember, you can go outside your basic shape. No tree is going to be exactly semicircular at all. And here we'll even have a gap here. So I'll rub that out to show you, so that you've not got a boring shape, but a shape as it will be in nature. I'll rub these bits out so they don't get in the way. So you'll see, although this one comes down to the ground here, this one doesn't. Remember, this is the trunk, really close to the ground. So again, we've got a fairly wide trunk at the bottom, but it quickly goes into quite narrow trunks and then branches. And this one, that one just stops there because it's broken off sometime in the past. This one is more regular. Again, I'll just make that this separate bit clearer, because this one is going to be more bendy. But again, we're using exactly the same principles that we did with the other trees. In fact, this bottom trunk here is too thick, so I'm making it thinner. That's the main trunk. We're going to go up once again, but given as much variety as possible. There will actually be, it'd be like a hole showing through the middle of the tree, because again, when you draw them, there are all sorts of places where you look through them. And of course, if they're covered in leaves, remember I deliberately did the oak tree. Of course, I forgot to say that, but I'm sure you guessed, deliberately did the oak tree in the winter without leaves so that you could see the overall shape. And this one is going to have leaves on it, but first of all, it's easier to draw the branches, of course, and put the leaves on later. You can overpaint the leaves, of course, with paint like gouache or watercolor or acrylic, and then the branches will be only showing through in places. If you think back to I'm sure you remember the rowan tree I painted in front of the the osprey. I painted the branches first and then dabbed the leaves on all over, but over the top of the branches to make it look as authentic as possible. So lots of branches and twigs first, and later you can put the leaves on. If you want to put the leaves on, of course. We're already running out of time here, so I'm not going to put the leaves on myself. You can do that later. If you paint all the branches here in browns so that they stand out, and then you can start painting with different colored leaves, greens and yellows and browns and what have you, over the top, dabbing them on, but don't cover all the branches up. Remember, they're going to look like these, so you've got light showing through still. I mean, these are painted quite small. You can especially see with this ash. I think, yes, this is an ash. I mean, the leaves are too big as well in proportion, because this is quite a small drawing. And so there'll be lots of light showing through the leaves there, and lots of twigs showing through the leaves. So now let's have a go at something more complicated. This beautiful Scots pine here. You notice the leaves don't grow on Scots pines. They tend to grow quite quickly, and the lower branches actually fall off. So you see a lot of the higher branches remaining. So they've got this sort of crown, and that's why ospreys love to nest in them. They have a flatter top, and even eagles as well, and other birds. So we'll try and do that now. Okay, I have to turn this piece of paper over. And again, I'll bend that. Bend that down the middle so I can put it alongside. So we're going to do the Scots pine here. So again, it's more or less straight. More or less straight with a sort of like a crescent on the top and a couple of side branches, and then they tend to hang down. So you've got another kind of crescent, curly crescent here, small crescent there, and slightly different shaped one here. You see they're all basically the same sorts of shapes, but they're all, again, they're all individual. You look at, go and look at Scots pines. They're one of my favorite trees. They grow all over Britain with the very red trunks and the very green foliage. So again, the trunk is fairly slender. The side branches of side trunks are of course thinner, and they branch off. In fact, they have quite a lot of small branches, earlier branches that have fallen off over the years. Savannah pictures, yes. If you want to put this tree into Savannah pictures, although of course Savannah is basically, this is, if you did that as a shorter tree, it would look like an acacia. If you want to draw African Savannah with lions resting underneath, as I'm sure you want to do, then you'd have a similar sort of tree, an acacia tree, but with a shorter trunk, with a vast savanna here, and herds of zebra and wildebeest, of course. This, I don't know what this, ignore this at the side here. This was already on the piece of paper. Anyway, so that's your basic Scots pine. Then we're going to put in individual shapes. So this becomes bits like that. Again, they're all overlapping. And they overlap the ones beneath as well. So I'll rub that bit out. That's the way to make things look more three-dimensional, is to have overlapping bits, where some bits are obviously in front of other bits. So this bit is now underneath. So when you come to paint that, I should do that now, you will have shadow under here from the overhanging foliage above, and you will have shadow behind the clumps of foliage like this. And at the bottom, you see here, we've got the shadows done in paint. Here, I'm doing them in line. actually, perhaps you could let me know if you want me to do a painting demonstration, an actual painting demonstration as well, and you can all follow along, then please let me know using watercolor. Oh, so you're going to put dinosaurs under them, right, right. You need to get the right trees if you're going to put dinosaurs under trees. Things like cycads and monkey puzzle trees, actually. So we're going to put that one in the background there, completely in the dark. And this one here will only have a bit of shadow underneath it. You want to put shadow on the trunks as well, like that. That makes them stand out. I know I'm going a bit fast now, but we're running out of time. So don't, as I always say, please don't hurry your drawings. If you want to work on your drawings later, don't hurry them now. Just get the basics in. Go at your own pace. Get the basics in, and you can do as much as you like later. The trunks, of course, also a nice thing about conifer trunks, drawing a bit here, is they have these great big like scales on the bark which all overlap. In fact, they look like scales. They look like scales on a dinosaur, and they're all individual. Again, I'm showing how to put the shading on the side to make this look three-dimensional. Shading is always one of the most important things to put on a drawing or a painting. Does anyone remember that picture I showed you of a beech tree, which looked like a Greek statue of a human body with all the shadows around it? The shadows really make that stand out. Just a few bits and pieces down here now. Putting the shading down the side of the tree. As I've said before, this is the light source. And it's literally the light source in my house because the window is there. And out there is the estuary and the great big sky. Looking decidedly cloudy at the moment. So light's coming in here. So the shadows are going to be mainly on this side of the drawing and underneath. So if there was a shadow going out from the tree, it would go out this way. And that's the other way to join your trees or whatever, your rocks, to the background. Imagine a bit of background here, bit of savanna or plain. Have to have a few slight hills on it. Again, the hills would have shadows there. The trees in the background would be smaller, of course, but with the same sorts of shapes. You see already how just by doing that, a couple of bushes, shading to the side. We've got the idea of recession. I'm sure you know the principle like this of things receding towards the background. So you've got a line of telegraph poles like that. Then they're simply going to get smaller as they go away from you. So these are some of the basic principles of drawing and art. Another one there. Okay, I think I'd better hand over back to Ben now for any questions or observations. And of course, we want to see your drawings as well and your comments. So I'll stop sharing the screen now. By the way, you do know you can make screenshots. You know how to make screenshots while I'm doing these things to look at later. Although, of course, Ben has videoed it as well, haven't you?
Yes.
Yes. You're silent at the moment, Ben.
Okay. Thank you very much, Philip. The next art session will be 13th of January next year. As I said earlier, this is the last session of this year. And if anybody has any questions or wants to show their pictures, more than welcome to ask and show them.